Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. I do not have an agenda. I think we are just here to discuss the funding. So I will kick us off. Eliberto or Karen, do you want to start?
Go, Eliberto.
So and I know
Please.
Karen, Caitlin, and Graham are on phones, so I am not sure and so is Kimberly. I think we did send out the options
Last Wednesday.
So you have hopefully had an opportunity to review them. We can start, and I wonder if it's a Q&A on the options and then a decision, or if there's an other discussion that we need to have before we decide on options.
Why don't you just review the three options?
All right, so let's start there,
High
and
level.
then we can, let's do high level, and then we can change. We can decide what we want to do afterwards. Let me start with option A. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can we all see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so I started on the allocation formula. Option A is actually what Brian recommended, with one of the recommendations that came out of the board meeting, where it has a 13-point spread. Oh, and I see Karen Phillips is trying to join the meeting, Erica. So if you all remember, we went back and forth, and Brian suggested, could we have a 13-point spread, which I worked it, and we can have a 13-point spread. And what that does, let me transfer over to the actual matrix itself, is that, let me go back. The lowest score is a 74, so anything below that does not get funded. We only have 2 agencies below a 74. That's A Way Forward and Senior Housing Options. I forget why these other ones are highlighted. Well, I know why. Oh, I do remember. We were going to look at these. These was because they came late. We decided that's fine for Colorado State Parent Coalition. And then this for Boulder County Farmers Market is because they hit the, based on their request, they hit the individual agency limit. So this is after I did the ratios, this is what they get, and it will equal to 83,546. So, oh, and here comes Caitlin again. So yeah, basically, we fund everybody either 100, 90, or 80% of their request. And with this formula, only 2 agencies do not get funded. Let's go to B. So B was the original one. You've seen this before. I won't take too much time. In B was where our cutoff was 80, and it was an 11-point range for the different funding levels.
You might want to share that screen. Take this one down and share that one.
Can you not see this one?
You're still on A.
Am I on A?
Yes.
Oh, okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing and do it again, sorry.
Sorry.
I see B on mine, but it must have not switched. B. I want to do screen 2 instead. And that way when it shares, it should be whatever is on screen 2. Oh, and I got an email, Erica, from Madeline asking that we resend the link. So if you could resend her the link.
I will send it to her.
Thank you. So this is B again. If we look at the allocation formula, it's an 11-point range. It ends at 80 is the lowest you can receive in order to receive funding. This does increase the amount of agencies that don't get funding. It doesn't really change much up here. A lot of, yes, there are some that don't get the highest, but because we're pretty steady on the 190 and 80, and it does increase some and it does decrease others, but it doesn't change a whole lot. It's really about who doesn't get funding because of their score. And then the last one is option C. Can we all see that? Do we see allocation formula? And this is a 15-point spread, and the lowest is 68. And of course, at that point, everybody receives some level of funding, either 80, 90, or 100%. Except for, of course, the agencies that were disqualified. Those do not get funding, but that's not because of their scores. In fact, both of those score enough to get funding. And so those are our options at this point. Those, we had Brian's suggestion, we had the original, and then this is the largest point spread that we wanted to create. So or have as an option. Oh, here goes Madeline. So I think at this point I'm gonna stop sharing, and we can have a discussion.
Brian, I see your electronic hand raised.
Thank you, Caitlin. So I was going to try to be efficient in my comments. One is, I like option A. I agree with Karen Roney's, kind of discussion of not necessarily having a target to fund every single individual, but making sure that we have clear performance expectations on the funding. However, I think the organizations included in the funding A are important ones, and that they do run good programs. Also, in relation to that discussion, it occurs to me that as we increase our expectations of our partners, many, if not most, will step up or stop applying. And so we probably are going to be in a situation where we're seeing more awards as a percentage basis than we might have seen 5 years ago. Because I think the performance of some of these organizations relative to the needs of Longmont is improving. And that's a good outcome. So I know Jack Welch liked to cut anybody who was graded a C, which was always 1/3, and then you had the A and the Bs, but it's possible we're developing an A and B partner list that's applying, not as many Cs. So that simply was my comments.
Thanks, Brian. Other comments or any questions on the different options? Okay, I will, Karen Roney.
So sorry.
You're fine.
Where's my hand? So I think the other thing is just a reminder is that with all of the options, it still leaves us with some unallocated dollars. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So all options leave us with unallocated funding. And then we'll talk about that moving forward.
Great. I was going to add, I agree with Brian on liking option A, give us a little bit more spread. I do agree with the idea that, there are potentially some agencies that don't necessarily, that didn't meet criteria, but I also think that the fact that we're not fully funding every organization, so the lower scored ones, that has impacted the amount of funding they're able to get relative to what they requested. So A feels like it strikes the right balance to me. Other comments or questions on the three different options? If there are, yes, Karen Phillips.
I appreciate, Karen saying that, and Brian, I still think that it's these organizations that aren't funded, they're still good organizations. And I just think that, we just give them a partial, just saying, I don't know. It just seems like, the people that can do a better proposal or something, get the money. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable not giving them something, but that's just how I feel about it.
Deanna.
So I think to Karen's point, I can see that if we go with option A, there are two agencies that don't get funded, right? But both of those agencies were scored super low by staff, 23 and 22, and like sort of in the ballpark by the board, right? Like on the lower end, but still within the realm of comparatively on point with some of the other organizations. So clearly when staff reviewed those, they saw something that was really concerning. I guess I also don't want them to be excluded just because they didn't know how to fill out an application or they didn't have a professional grant writer helping them out. But it also strikes me that if the board rated them that low, there's probably some problems that they're facing, and maybe at a minimum, those issues could be communicated to them so that they would know how to address it moving forward for the next funding cycle. I don't know. I know we talked about communicating issues with applications previously, but I would support, especially since it's only two, so it wouldn't be very onerous, having a conversation with those two organizations about what the problems were and what they could do to correct those moving forward.
I mean, I think that's also applicable to the organizations that we aren't funding fully, right? Because a bunch of the ones that are at the 80%, I think is what we ended up at for the lowest ones. A bunch of those, I think, were definitely on the lower end of scores for both staff and the board. Obviously, we didn't rate everyone really highly. And so there are clearly some areas of improvement. And I don't think that, having gone through this with Eliberto and Karen, I know one thing is that several of the agencies actually had reached out before applying and got support from staff in applying. So they don't need professional grant writers to be able to apply. I know that staff have helped when people have questions about what is, what's on the application and what they should be providing and that sort of thing. And I don't know that these organizations, I don't know that any of these are really new organizations, such that I don't think any of these are new applicants. So it's not like they haven't gone through this process before. If there aren't other comments, do we have a motion to adopt one of the plans for funding? Yes, Deanna.
I will move to adopt option A.
Do we have a second?
From Graham.
Second from Graham. All in favor who are on video, raise your hand.
Oh, so before we vote on that, sorry. Just,
Okay.
Before I forget, we have, Karen and I talked about this before, right before the meeting, is Kimberly and Brian have potential conflicts. So the way that we think we want to do it, so A is fine.
So,
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what we were thinking of doing is maybe asking the board to take multiple votes with slates so that Kimberly could recuse herself. For example, she sent an email saying that she's a subcontractor with the R Center. So we could vote on A, excluding the R Center and the farmer's market for Brian. and then we could hold separate votes on those individually. Does that make sense, Caitlin?
Yes. I think so. I would say we can
the
vote on
other-
the entire funding, the formula. I'd
Okay.
say that what we're voting on is the formula and the point spread. And then if we need, then let's do a secondary one of adopting the actual funding based on that formula. Does that make sense? Okay, so this first vote is Deanna. Am I correct that you have proposed that we adopt option A with the 13-point range as our funding strategy? Okay, and Graham seconded that. So we will take a vote on adopting option A for the funding strategy. All those in favor on video, please raise your hand. And then, so that is everybody except for Madeline. And then Graham, are you a yes or a no on A?
Yes, please.
Oh, and it looks like Madeline is also a yes. Okay. So that passes. And then Catherine, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. Sorry, I thought I saw.
She had an enthusiastic yes hand.
Okay,
that stayed
perfect.
up for a while.
Perfect. So that was unanimous. So
and I think we also have another option. So if then we vote for the, for the allocation under that option. So either Brian and Kimberly could abstain from the vote, or we could do it like Eliberto and I had talked about, is that we vote all agencies recommended for funding, absent farmers market and our center, when we do separate votes for that. So they can abstain from the whole vote, or we could, pull them out separately.
does anyone have strong opinions about how we should do that? Yes, Brian.
That works fine for me. I just want to clarify, it's really a question. We have a quorum. We don't need a quorum to vote. We just need a quorum present, right? And then the majority of the voting carries.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I am more than happy to abstain from the entire vote to simplify the process.
Okay. The other thing I was going to say, and Eliberto and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, since we did not make any changes to the funding allocation for either of those agencies, by adopting that as our funding allocation formula, do we actually need to do a second vote? Does that make sense? Like, we didn't go in and make any adjustments to anybody based on that formula. So if the formula was okay overall, then do we need another vote?
Well, because Brian and Kimberly voted for option A, so we do need another vote.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it could just be, a motion to adopt the 2022 funding recommendations.
Got it.
Adopt those, right?
Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the funding recommendations based on this allocation formula? Deanna so moves. Do we have a second? We need somebody. Okay, Karen Phillips. All those in favor of adopting this recommendation, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? And all those abstaining from this vote? Okay. So we had 2 abstentions and everybody else voted in favor. So adopted. That leaves us with the question of the additional funds.
Yeah, and so just so you know the amount, because now that we have an official vote, I know the official amount. This leaves us with $100,576.
Okay. And I think the last time we discussed the fact that City Council was setting aside additional funds for a couple of priority areas, and that was one option for allocating these funds as well. There were a few other things on the table, but my recollection was that that was the most talked about and sort of the one that folks were leaning toward. Does anyone remember differently or want to ask any questions about that? Yes, Karen Roney.
So Eliberto and I again talked about this a little bit today. And if we don't have to make that decision exactly today, you know, we have a regular meeting on the 9th, that'd be a week from tomorrow. So if you wanted us to come back and to flesh out, you know, some of those opportunities in more detail, you know, we can. I think the rough notes that we included in your packet was that there was some interest in either looking at, I'm looking for them now. So we talked about using those dollars to help with households that were behind in their utility bills. So that gained some traction in terms of those that are still trying to recover from the pandemic. We also, you know, again, talked about, is this something that we could use to complement the work that the City Council has identified in terms of additional mental health services and childcare needs, again, related to the pandemic. You know, we also could do, if we wanted to, you know, a supplemental funding process, not going through the whole EC impact, but you know, if we wanted to kind of wait and see what emerged, you know, for the early part of next year, and we could do a supplemental, you know, funding process. You know, the other thing, because I was talking to the city manager just as an FYI earlier this afternoon, and said, so we're finishing up our allocation process. Regardless of which option we're choosing, we will not allocate all monies based on our current formula. So I said, I just was giving them a heads up, and you know, and he seemed to be okay with that, and you know, and suggested also is that it seems like things emerge in the course of a year, and it could be that we just hold some of those funds and see what kinds of emerging issues come up, and maybe be able to help you know, allocate some money that way. So anyhow, we have some flexibility, and again, if you want to pound that out today, we certainly can. We can also do this on the 9th and bring back some more, you know, specific recommendations, however you want to do that.
I would very much like to come back, give it some thought, and come back with some alternative ways of using it. It's an awful lot of money to do anything less than very carefully. Well, I won't be here, but
well, yeah.
But I'd like a lot of consideration to be given to how those dollars are allocated.
Yeah, to be invested. Yeah, got it.
Other thoughts on that, Deanna, and then Brian?
I think I agree with Madeline. It's a lot of money. I mean, if we were talking about $10,000, I might feel a little differently, but it's more than we fund any single organization on the grid. And it's probably this equivalent of funding 2 or 3 organizations. So I would like to make sure that we get it right. I am generally not a fan of kicking the can down the road, but I think in this instance, it makes sense to make sure we're cautious about where we suggest that money gets allocated.
Brian?
I also agree, and I actually like the idea of maybe having a kind of the ability to be reactive sometime in the future to circumstances that may come up, because all of the agencies that we're funding are forecasting what needs are going to be, and who knows if there's a housing issue that comes up, that if we can help in a timely way might be really beneficial. It's the first time that since I've been on the board, that we're in that position of being able to potentially think about making investments in a different way.
I would also agree with that. I like the idea of being able to be reactive, but I also am thinking about how quickly some of the agencies had to pivot with COVID, and we are not out of that. And so I think having a little bit of flexibility there, particularly knowing that there's more potentially coming that will impact our community in really significant ways, gives us an opportunity to really do some assessment and see what comes for the next year. Catherine. You're muted still.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I do agree with holding it as well. One thing that has come to my attention while I've been in the education community and subbing is that there is talk that if we have another COVID outburst, that the schools may go remote again, in which case childcare will become a major issue very quickly. So that is something to consider with this money, that that may come down the pike very rapidly, as some school districts around the state have already gone remote or hybrid in preparation for that, as staff has dropped out. So that was something I was thinking about when considering this money.
All right. Based on what I'm hearing, I don't know if we need to take a vote. It sounds like we've got additional that we need to allocate. So we're going to come back with more options.
So it sounds like we'll flesh out some more detail about some of those options, and then bring this back for a more thorough discussion on the 9th.
Okay. Is there any other business?
A point of clarification on that date. Are we talking the 9th of December? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
yes.
I will be here.
You
So,
will still be here, Madeline, unless you.
Okay. Okay. No, I'll be here. I was thinking we were talking to. I'm sorry. I'm doing a lot. I'm in my car. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
this was a special meeting, and our regular meeting is the 9th.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So you will be here.
All right. Thank you.
Or at least your term will not have ended. I should say it that way.
Oh, I'll be here.
Okay.
Karen Phillips.
Yeah, I don't mean to be nagging on that issue of the people that didn't get funded, but do you all try to help them, or do they call you, or how does that kind of transpire? Do you let them know why they didn't get the money?
Yeah. So what we do is we certainly invite that. And basically say, blah, blah, blah. If you want more feedback, more input about your score or why you didn't get funding or blah, blah, blah. We do include that in the award letter and let them know that. And I think as, Caitlin mentioned, I mean, we have certainly some agencies that have followed up, and we have been able to provide very specific feedback. More so in terms of what Eliberto and I saw, because we just have your scores. So sometimes there usually are very few comments on your evaluation forms. The board evaluation forms is mostly scores, but we look for comments to see if there are any comments from the board. And if there are, we offer that. And if not, then it's really, what Eliberto and I saw.
Okay. And I mean, I know you guys do what you're know what you're doing. So for sure. It's just, I was just curious about how that works. And
well, sometimes we know what we're doing.
No, you guys know what you're doing. I mean,
but we know why. We know why we answered the way we did. But
got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So, thank you for that. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks.
All right. If there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, and seconded by Deanna. See you all next week.
All right, thank you.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.